today on Mother Mayhem.
That being said, I do have to urge all of you here to pay attention to this disturbing pattern of behavior that we're talking about. Your abuser is telling you that you are the abuser. That is some kind of mind fuckery, and that shit is the shit that really can do damage. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Podcast for Daughters. I'm your host, Heather Gray, and today I and all of you are going to be really grateful to Clark and her podcasting editing skills. I am going to be leaning on her heavily for this one. So back in December, when I had taken a break from the show, I got a letter from a listener, and I'm naming her Audrey. Audrey was my best friend in the 6th grade, and one of her favorite things to do was to talk back and forth on walkie-talkies, and I was reminded of this as I was putting together today's episode. You're going to see why in a second. Audrey wrote me a letter, and when I got the letter, she had asked about managing the social expectations of sharing news about her family publicly when you are in a no or low contact relationship with your mom. She then asked about a term that's popping up more and more in the narcissistic abuse recovery space called reactive abuse. And as you know, I struggle with terminology like this because I feel like it gives entirely too much attention to the narcissist, but it also serves to add additional traumas to survivors that they then tell themselves they have to work through. Here's how Audrey and I will be talking about it today. Reactive abuse is when abusers instigate and antagonize their victims into having strong, overt responses to their behaviors as a way of changing the narrative. Instead of the conversation being about them and their behavior, the narcissist can now make the decision and the conversation all about you and your reaction to them. Now, when narcissists become particularly insidious, one of the things that they do is they use your reaction to their mistreatment as an example of how you are abusing them. It is a manipulative mind game, and it's a strategy narcissists, and as you know, we're talking about your mothers here, so your mothers are using to control the dynamics as if everyone becomes a puppet on a string that she's controlling. After getting Audrey's letter, I found that I had a lot of things to say. Apparently more than 10 minutes worth of things to say. I sent her a voice message back with my response. In fact, I remember after replying to her that I was embarrassed about how long I had gone on for, and I realized that I had basically sent her a mini podcast episode. Turns out I did. In reflection, the conversation I had with Audrey is one that I want to include all of you in on. However, as you might imagine with one-on-one conversations, they can feel a little bit different than telling a whole entire podcast audience. So that being said, I want to read Audrey's letter to you, and then I want to add in my voice response that I sent back to her. But in full transparency, I have to be honest here. I edited out portions of my own reply that sort of felt too personal to share with a wider public audience. It's one thing to tell one person, and it becomes a whole other thing to tell a large audience of anonymous listeners. And in a show about boundaries, I think you guys are going to get that. So first, I want to dig in with you to Audrey's letter. Here she goes. Thank you so much for all of the information, insights, and encouragement. Your podcast is amazing. Your background information is always teaching me something new, but the other listener questions are where I'm learning the most and feel the least alone. I literally laughed out loud at how you said NPD moms act during weddings. I had to pay 2 Momzilla fees to vendors. I think I know how I'm going to handle my problem, but I thought I would write in to get your advice and to maybe help other listeners. My mother is in the middle of a 3-month-long silent treatment and smear campaign, and I have not made any effort to break the silence and beg the Queen for a pardon. I'm not upset, and I haven't been devoting any emotional energy to this because I'm just not interested in playing these games with her anymore. Here's the dilemma. My husband and I are fostering to adopt, and we recently received word that we would have a placement before Christmas, and we're thrilled. A few people in my family feel like I should make an effort to tell my mom, but I can't help but balk at this. I'm not even sure I want her to have a relationship with any of my children because I don't trust her not to weaponize my own kids against me. She already tried using my nieces that I'm extremely close to. And because she's so exclusionary to grandchildren who are not related to her biologically, I don't want to invite her into a space where her presence is not only unwelcome, but anxiety-inducing and feared by me. Why would I invite someone who always enjoys criticizing me and belittling my husband into such a joyous moment? Why would I want someone who cannot treat me with any amount of respect around the kids I already have? She was well aware that we were doing this before she unilaterally imposed the silent treatment, so it's not like this will have come completely out of left field for her. I know she's going to have an apocalyptic meltdown, whether she finds out from me or someone else. I'm sure I'm going to hear the tales about how she feels robbed of the chance to be there for me and be a grandmother, and that I'm withholding grandchildren from her out of spite. Is the smarter decision to share this news and meet the meltdown head on? What's the best thing to do here? P.S. For context, the contact level I have decided on is that I send her birthday and holiday cards with just our family name signed on the inside. Not because I want to, but because I know that she'll only escalate if she feels like I'm not missing her presence enough. This is a relatively low-cost way to reach my ultimate end goal, which is being left alone and for her to emotionally move on into some other drama. P.P.S. Would love a podcast on reactive abuse. When she isn't getting the attention or reaction she needs, my mother likes to push and provoke until me or my brothers, normally calm, laid back, and level-headed people, absolutely lose our minds and start screaming and cursing. I've actually noticed her smiling on several occasions when she succeeds in getting one of us to have a total meltdown. And then it feeds right into her I'm the victim narrative. I saw the concept of reactive abuse on TikTok, and I'm wondering if that's what's going on here, if that's common with NPD moms, and what are some tips to avoid getting too close to the edge of that reaction. And as you can hear, Audrey asked some really good questions, everyone. Here's the pared down version of what I initially offered her as a response. I'm then going to find you on the other side of my own message with some additional thoughts and things to think about.
It's Heather. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for reaching out to the show with a question. So I just thought I'd sit. I had a couple of minutes, so I just thought I'd keep you company for a second. We'll see how it goes, though. I have people working at the house. And there's construction sounds all about, and it's pissing my dog off. So it's been chaotic here. So we'll see how far I get before I get a disruption. I first wanted to tell you is that there is no indicator for you as to why you would tell your mom that you're fostering to adopt. She hasn't earned the privilege. She hasn't earned the vulnerability. She hasn't shown you in any way, shape, or form that she's capable of handling that news in a respectful way. So she hasn't earned the right to that privilege just because she happens to be your mother. That is a privilege that's earned with consistent, compassionate, loving, nurturing behavior towards you. And she hasn't been offering you that. A lot of people will get hung up on roles and they'll say, oh, your mom deserves to know. No, she doesn't. What I would encourage you to think about is how close to your inner circle. So if you think of yourself almost like a spider web and you're in the center, How many rings out are the people who are asking you this? Are these people that you would like maybe see and notice in the produce section of a grocery store? Or maybe they're a little bit closer to you and they're the people you wave to from the mailbox. Are they your front porch people? Are they your living room people? Are they your kitchen people? Or are they your bedroom people? The people who are really in the inner circle and know all the bits and bobs of your life. Before you give energy to how do you answer these people, how do you respond to them, recognize that any answer to that question is earned by the person asking it based on how they've acted towards you, spoken to you, treated you, and how you feel about them and how much you value the relationship and how close you feel to them in relationship. Because it's a hard conversation and not everybody earns your hard conversations. Anybody who just is like a produce section person and you're just like to say, I know a lot of people would think that that's a family announcement that should be made. That's not a family announcement I'm making at the present time. Or thank you for your opinion, or you don't even have to answer the question. You can just choose to ignore it. For the people who matter but don't seem to get it because they can't fathom their mothers not knowing, or they can't fathom ways that moms can be so insidious that they wouldn't earn the right to that information, we're just going to say like how great for them that they don't know what that is like, right? That they can't even imagine a world where a mom might lose her right to information about a potential grandchild. And so we're just going to recognize that that's not everybody's world. Not everybody knows. And so some people operate from that place because they have no idea that level of toxicity exists. And you're going to say, you know what? I know there's a lot of mother-daughter relationships where moms are like the first people to know this kind of news. That's not the relationship I have with my mom. Thank you for your thoughts, but I don't want to give that time or energy right now. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to say what she did, didn't do, and all of that. You can just say that's not an option for me at the present time, or that's not what I'm choosing to do right now. Because the thing with narcissism is that everybody experiences the narcissist differently. So for some people, your mom was super thoughtful. For some people, your mom was super generous. For some people, she was kind and considerate and compassionate. And so what possibly could be so bad that she loses the right to know about a grandchild? That's the covert nature of this. It's the idea that they're going to act one way publicly and a different way privately to you, and it's going to make you feel gaslit, and it's going to make you feel crazy. You're not gaslit. You're not crazy. You know your truth. It's just not shared by public perception. So you're going to say, I know it looks different on the outside looking in, but my mom and I don't have that kind of relationship, so I'm not choosing to engage with her. And then the other piece too is then you're reminding yourself of your truth and where you stand and how you think about it. Because oftentimes when we're doubting ourselves or we're feeling reactive to people's opinions of what we should do or what we shouldn't do, it triggers a little bit of our own doubt and our own insecurity in what we're doing. So you just spend some time affirming your truth, reminding yourself of what's true for you, even though it's not true for other people, and doing your best to take it from there. But not everybody earns your story. Not everybody earns your truth. So I would be paying attention to the people who have earned it, and everyone else, like I would just stay distant. And I would think of yourself as recognizing that any child who's fostered to adopt has already been through a world of hurt and a world of trauma and has already been abandoned. So we are not going to abandon that child again. And the way we're going to prevent that child from being abandoned is to not introduce them to somebody who has a history of being inconsistent, unreliable, and abusive. That's how I think you affirm that decision for yourself. You don't have to publicize that and strike a match to the whole thing, but quietly know that for yourself and hold that for yourself. In terms of the reactive abuse question, I think that's an awesome question. I do think I'm going to grab it and make it a podcast episode, but right now I have a list, I think, of like over 20 questions, and I only do one episode a week, so you'd be waiting a while on that. But let me say that the reactive abuse thing, I hate that phrase. You might have heard me talk on the show about all these ridiculous names that people in the narcissistic space do to describe trauma. And in my mind, it's a little sensationalizing of the experience. It's a little dramatic. For me, it creates an additional trauma for people. when they phrase it that way, it's like, oh, not only do I have a narcissistic mom, but she's also reactively abusive towards me. I think it just becomes one more thing that you're supposed to carry, overcome, and heal from, rather than one of the things my narcissistic mom does is bait me to the point of reacting so she can feel better about herself. Because it's like, yep, she's a narcissist, and yep, she's still doing narcissistic things. This is one of the narcissistic things she does, just like she gaslights, or she lies, or she manipulates, or she distorts the truth. So we're not giving energy to each individual thing. We're not calling it something new so it becomes an additional trauma. We're saying, okay, we are carrying inside us the awareness of the fact that our mom likes to get our goat, that she feels a sense of satisfaction when she can get a rise out of us. We're going to acknowledge that we're human and that sometimes she's going to succeed, but that doesn't mean she knows us. That doesn't mean she has access to us. That means that she knows the series of things that would irritate a shit ton of people, and she's doing the things that would irritate a shit ton of people because she wants a reaction. She doesn't like the energy that's inside of her. She's going to try to dispel that energy by doing something else to relieve the tension, which is getting you to dance so she doesn't feel so busy. What I would be thinking about is, now that someone does this, what do you want your response to be? Knowing who you want to be and how you want to move through the world, what is a response that feels good for you? And you work on being that. And when you know your mom presses your buttons and you know your mom does these things, who do you want to be and how do you want to be in response to that?
Okay, hi, it's Heather. I'm back, I guess. That was the end of my original audio. Now, I want you and Audrey to hear me really clearly on something. It's something that I wish I had spent more time on when I was actually talking to Audrey in the moment. Here's the thing. Reactive abuse is abuse. Full stop. So it is oversimplified of me and a little bit trite for me to say, who do you want to be and what do you want your response to be in reaction to being abused? And honestly, I considered editing that part out along with other pieces of things that I had said to Audrey. But the unfortunate reality here is that this is a reality for all of you. Your moms make abusive statements to you. Your moms choose abusive actions. As long as you're going to be in relationship with your moms, you are going to have to spend some time considering who you want to be and how you want to move through the world in response to the things that she says and does. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't true, but these are things that you're going to have to think about. One of the weapons your moms are going to use is blaming you for your reaction to her mistreatment. And you do need to decide for yourselves how you want to respond to her when she's baiting you, when she's trying to get a reaction out of you, or when she's setting you up to be in an argument. And honestly, I have to be real with you guys. It sucks for me to have to say this next part, but you also need a plan for what to do when she succeeds at getting you to break, to falter, or to break your resolve to not engage. So I want to tackle this more about responding to her when she's baiting you. When she's baiting you, she's abusing you. Full stop. This also means that she is in a dysregulated state herself. She's feeling stirred up within herself. She's having all these feelings of uncomfortable energy. She's looking to dispel that tension, and she's looking to get you to explode as a way of feeling better about herself and as a way of taking the attention off of herself. Now, it's my bias here that there is no way to calm talk this shit down. Staying calm only infuriates a narcissist even more. Pretending to ignore it, pretending to not notice it, skipping over it, or trying to ask her to stop only feeds the beast. When you're being provoked, get out, get out, get out. She may have already succeeded in dysregulating you yourself, or she's going to get pretty gosh darn close to it. So end the interaction. Say something like, I think we're about to step into a conflict I don't want to have, so I'm ending this conversation or I'm leaving right now. Or you might say something like, we really disagree on this and our history tells me we're unlikely to get ourselves onto the same page. It is highly unlikely in these moments that she's going to say, yeah, sure, fine, I understand. Let's talk later. She wouldn't be a narcissist if she could do that. More than likely, she is going to keep trying to bait you in her words, her tone, her body language, and her behavior until you just get the fuck out of that interaction. So don't worry about the niceties or the manners. Don't worry about being polite. Get out, get done, and stay gone until you can figure out how you want to return to the conversation, or if you want to return to the conversation. The usual advice I have in these situations is you're maintaining a relationship with your mom. She's a narcissist, that she's going to say and do narcissistic things. Trying to return to a conversation where she already tried to dysregulate you once likely means she would try to dysregulate you again. I would just skip it and let it go under the rug. Again, you don't have to make that choice. If you're choosing to be in relationship with her, you are going to have to find some place to put that nonsense, because you're never going to be able to have that conversation with her. Now, what happens if she's gotten to you and you have lost control and now she's pointing it out? Here's my advice. Just own it. Your mother is the one who lies. She's the one who manipulates. She's the one who turns the truth into something else, not you. It is going to burn you a little bit to let her think that she won, but also it's not a secret that she won. You already had a reaction and she already knows you had the reaction. So if I were you, I would just fess up. Yes, you're right. I raised my voice. I should have left the conversation. I'm leaving it now. Yes, I XYZ or ABC. I really wish I hadn't. Now, here's what I really want you to hear from me in these moments. Do not apologize. Don't offer validation for her experience. That is only going to feed her ego, but you can acknowledge your own behavior and then get out. These moments are infuriating. When someone has gotten to you and you didn't want them to, as you might imagine, as the therapist, I can have pretty high expectations of myself sometimes when I'm in an argument with people. And as you might also imagine, I can be pretty infuriating to be in an argument with. No one wants to be in a fight with a therapist who has the answers, the insight, the calm talking as a professional skill set. And you could just ask my husband on that. He could tell you how maddening that can be. And as you might imagine too, I am a talker and a communicator. So if there is tension, I want to talk about it right away. He isn't as quick as me at understanding himself or what's going on. So sometimes in the tension, talking is the last thing he wants to do, because I quote, end quote, already have all the answers and the solutions, and he isn't even done being mad yet. So here's confession time. In our early years, I was a door slammer. And I can tell you, ladies, in all honesty, between you and me, to this very, very day, nothing feels as satisfying as a door slam for me. Now, I sat there and I took so much shit as a kid that when I was in a relationship and I could fight back and I could argue back, I would. And I admit to experiencing a fair amount of freedom in that. I also think it's what safety in a relationship can feel like. So until I was on the other side of the door, knowing I had all the tools I needed to handle that better and communicate better, and I didn't. Then, sitting on the other side of the door, I would feel shame. shame that I was the therapist who knew better, but I didn't choose better. Then I would think about my clients and I would be sad and disappointed in myself, thinking I was a hypocrite and I had no business doing what I did for a living. And you can see the spiral I could go down. So I had to decide for myself that I didn't want to be a door slammer. I had to acknowledge that the younger part of me that will always get satisfaction out of a good old-fashioned door slam, but I didn't want to choose behaviors that kept making me feel bad about myself. I had to acknowledge that I had the choice to slam a door, but that I simply didn't want to, because the natural consequence of doing that was really too great. So I had to get better at disengaging, at backing away and backing down and calming down and giving him time to calm down too before returning to the conversation. Now, that last part, I'm still working on a little bit. I promise being married to a therapist is awesome. Husbands just love it when you can come back with a 30-minute analysis of what went wrong, why, and what could be done differently the next time. I promise you, it really truly is their favorite thing. My point here is that disengaging from reactive abuse is always going to fall on you. And a good way of managing that is to reflect on the natural consequences that come with taking a bite out of something. And if we're being really honest with one another here, sometimes we're all going to consciously choose to take a bite out of the bait because enough is enough. But more often, you will hate losing control to her, hate having her see you losing control, and hate having her think that she won. And that will be motivation enough to remove yourself. And when it isn't, just focus on the natural consequences that come with engaging. Also, you all know that I think that going no contact is a really personal decision. While there are going to be other narcissistic abuse recovery experts, quote unquote, that push no contact as the only answer, I really do try to meet all of you where you are at in your journeys, and some of you just aren't there yet, while others of you already know that going no contact isn't going to be a choice that works for you. That being said, I do have to urge all of you here to pay attention to this disturbing pattern of behavior that we're talking about. Your abuser is telling you that you are the abuser. That is some kind of mind fuckery. And that shit is the shit that really can do damage. That is the kind of story that if we start to internalize it, can really change the story we have about ourselves, about what we're capable of. And that is often your mother's goal. That is often the narcissist's goal, to get us questioning ourselves, making us think that we're the problem and that we're bad people. So when you have a mother who engages in reactive abuse, you really do have to walk yourself through that no contact decision. Now that I know that reactive abuse is a weapon that my mother can and will use, do I still want to have a relationship with her? For all of the crazy ass narcissistic things that your moms are doing, there is great power in regularly checking in with yourselves on your recovery journey and asking yourselves if you need to change the contact level you have with your mom. There's power in re-choosing and owning your decision from the driver's seat of your life. Acknowledge that you have the choice to disengage more than you have been, but for whatever reasons that are personal to you, you are choosing not to. Audrey, thank you so much for this exchange. And I know it's been a while since we talked, but I hope you did still find something helpful here. Best of luck to you and your growing family. You are in a community of women around the world who are in this with you. They're rooting for you, and I most certainly am too. Thanks so much. Bye for now. I'm so grateful that you're here. You're right where you're supposed to be. At its heart, I'm hoping to use this show to build a community of women working together to heal from childhoods marked by maternal narcissism and emotional neglect. My goal for Mother Mayhem is that this show becomes an advice and mentoring driven show where you share your questions, struggles, and stories, and I offer you direction for healing and recovery. That can't happen without your contributions. I invite you to send a recorded voice memo or write in an email with your questions and things you're struggling with. You can always find me over at heather@daughtersnpd.com. To connect further, I invite you to find me over at Instagram and occasionally on TikTok at DaughtersNPD. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, I'm going to ask that you share the show with her. You can help me get the word out with your reviews and social shares of the show, and I hope you'll consider doing so. Special thanks to Heather Clark for editing this show. She's in my head and knows what I meant to say when the words come out backwards. Thanks for your time today. I'm always in it with you. Bye for now.